In recent years, we've heard more and more about how the translation of the Book of Mormon was done with a seer stone and a hat as opposed to the Urim and Thummim. Many scholars and church intellectuals have attempted to synthesize this narrative with the gospel, but their message is clear. The church that taught you the story of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon lied to you, and the new information proves it. But what new information or document has come out that brings to light the narrative of the stone and a hat? There is none. The new narrative posits that Joseph Smith used the Urim and Thummim, or Nephite interpreters, for the translation of the Book of Lehi. During this time, his wife Emma Smith, as well as Martin Harris, acted as scribes. After the loss of the 116 pages, Joseph Smith used his heavenly seer stone to translate the remainder of the Book of Mormon, with Oliver Cowdery acting as scribe and attempting translation once, as seen in D&C Section 9. This is a fairly uncontroversial narrative. The people who created it are faithful people. There are just a few fatal flaws in this story. A primary source often used to form the translation narrative is the account of Emma Hale Smith. Emma stated in an interview that she frequently wrote day after day, often sitting at the table close by him, he sitting with his face buried in a hat with the stone in it, and dictating hour after hour with nothing between us. The only problem with that is that Emma's handwriting isn't on any portion of the Book of Mormon manuscript. She certainly acted as scribe during the first 116 pages, but according to the narrative, the seer stone wasn't in use for the first 116 pages. Historians also seem to ignore the other portions of this interview where she claims that Joseph was never commanded to practice polygamy and never received revelation on it. She also isn't even sure who baptized her in the interview, and when asked if Joseph kept her from examining the plates, she states, "I do not think he did." Similarly, Oliver Cowdery described the translation process multiple times, and each time he said unequivocally that Joseph translated using the Urim and Thummim, or as the Nephites would have said, interpreters. How can this be when the narrative states that only the seer stone was used while Cowdery was scribe? Should we discount Oliver Cowdery or the narrative of these historians? It is interesting to note that neither Emma Smith nor David Whitmer were the originators of the stone and a hat theory. They originated out of whole cloth in anti-Mormon literature. Revisionist historians, wittingly or not, have revived old, tired anti-Mormon myths that have been long denied by the prophets. Several claims within the book Joseph Smith Rough Stone Rolling by Richard Bushman are that Joseph Smith was involved in ritual folk magic and looked in his seer stone to find buried treasure, and later to read the Book of Mormon. This would of course be without the use of the plates, which Mormon and Moroni spent their entire lives abridging and protecting. Both of these claims do not originate in journals or statements of the prophet, but rather by a man named Dr. Philastus Hurlbut, in his book Mormonism Unveiled, the first anti-Mormon book to ever be written. Dr. Philastus Hurlbut was a former member of the church who was excommunicated twice for adultery, then vowing to wash his hands in the blood of Joseph Smith. He went back to Palmyra and collected signed affidavits from the Smith family's old neighbors, each with a wild story of the Smith family being indolent, lazy, drunken treasure diggers who used peepstones and were generally more focused on folk magic than Christianity. We'll cover the Smith family's alleged treasure digging and indolence in the next video. To finish off, we will consider the Book of Mormon translation as a trial. Here are the witnesses for the divine purpose and use of the Urim and Thummim, as opposed to the seer stone. Joseph Fielding Smith. While the statement has been made by some writers that the prophet Joseph Smith used a seer stone part of the time in his translating of the record, and information points to the fact that he did have in his possession such a stone, yet there is no authentic statement in the history of the church which states that the use of such a stone was made in that translation. The information is all hearsay, and personally I do not believe that this stone was used for this purpose. Mosiah and Mormon. Mosiah chapter 28 verses 13 through 16 read, "And now he, Mosiah, translated them by the means of these two stones which were fastened into the two rims of a bow. Now these things were prepared from the beginning, and were handed down from generation to generation, for the purpose of interpreting languages. And they have been kept and preserved by the hand of the Lord, that he should discover to every creature who should possess the land the iniquities and abominations of the people. And whosoever has these things is called seer, after the manner of old times." The prophet Joseph Smith, in the Pearl of Great Price, which is canonized scripture. With the records was found a curious instrument which the ancients called Urim and Thummim, which consisted of two transparent stones set in the rim of a bow fastened to a breastplate. Through the medium of the Urim and Thummim, I translated the record by the gift and power of God. Oliver Cowdery, the only other person who ever participated in the translation process, also in the pearl of great price. These were days never to be forgotten. To sit under the sound of a voice dictated by the inspiration of heaven awakened the utmost gratitude of this bosom. Day after day I continued, uninterrupted, to write from his mouth, as he translated with the Urim and Thummim, or as the Nephites would have said, interpreters, the history or record called the Book of Mormon. Final witness, the Lord, when speaking to Joseph Smith. Now behold, I say unto you that because you delivered up those writings which you had power given unto you to translate, by the means of the Urim and Thummim, into the hands of a wicked man, you have lost them, and you also lost your gift at the same time, and your mind became darkened. Nevertheless it is now restored unto you again. Therefore see that you are faithful, and continue on unto the finishing of the remainder of the work of translation, as you have begun. Speaking to the brother of Jared, ye shall write them and shall seal them up, that no one can interpret them, for ye shall write them in a language that they cannot be read. And behold, these 2 stones will I give unto thee, and ye shall seal them up also with the things which ye shall write. For behold, the language which ye shall write I have confounded. Wherefore I will cause in my own due time that these stones shall magnify to the eyes of men these things which ye shall write.